Good evening, all, and welcome to Liminal Muse. And thank you for joining me once again as we read Pollyanna. If you'd like to support me and the channel, there's a link to buy me a coffee and check out my handcrafted items for sale or commission. You can also follow me on Blue Sky or Discord. So let's take a moment, first of all, to settle into this place of stories and dreams. Take a breath and ground yourself so that your imagination can soar. In her last reading, Pollyanna played something of a hero when she came across an injured Mr. John Pendleton, stranded in the woods. At the man's behest, she ran to his home and she rang for the doctor. Then, to his surprise, she ran back to him and stayed by his side until help came. This also gave Pollyanna the chance to meet the kind Dr. Thomas Chilton. The good doctor, we learn, has heard of the whimsical little girl, and upon speaking with her, he is still more impressed and touched by her generosity of spirit. Chapter 16. A Red Rose and a Lace Shawl. It was on a rainy day, about a week after Pollyanna's visit to Mr. John Pendleton, that Miss Polly was driven by Timothy to an early afternoon committee meeting of the Ladies' Aid Society. When she returned at 3 o'clock, her cheeks were a bright, pretty pink, and her hair, blown by the damp wind, had fluffed into kinks and curls wherever the loosened pins had given leave. Pollyanna had never before seen her aunt look like this. "Oh! Oh! Oh! Why, Aunt Polly, you've got him too!" she cried rapturously, dancing round and round her aunt as that lady entered the sitting room. "Got what, you impossible child?" Pollyanna was still revolving round and round her aunt. "And I never knew you had 'em. Can folks have 'em when you don't know they've got 'em? Do you suppose I could? Before I get to heaven, I mean," she cried, pulling out with eager fingers the straight locks above her ears. "Oh, but then they wouldn't be black if they did come. You can't hide the black part." "Pollyanna, what does all this mean?" demanded Aunt Polly, hurriedly removing her hat and trying to smooth back her disordered hair. No, please, Aunt Polly." Pollyanna's jubilant voice turned to one of distressed appeal. "Don't smooth them out. It's those I'm talking about, those darling little black curls. Oh, Aunt Polly, they're so pretty." "Nonsense. What do you mean, Pollyanna, by going to the Ladies' Aid the other day in the absurd fashion about that beggar boy?" "Oh, but it is nonsense," urged Pollyanna, answering only the first of her aunt's remarks. "You don't know how pretty you look with your hair like that. Oh, Aunt Polly, please, mayn't I do your hair like I did Mrs. Snow's and put in a flower? I'd so love to see it that way. Why, you'd be ever so much prettier than she was." "Pollyanna!" Miss Polly spoke very sharply, all the more sharply because Pollyanna's words had given her an odd throb of joy. When before had anybody cared how she or her hair looked? When before had anybody loved to see her pretty? "Pollyanna, you did not answer my question. Why did you go to the Ladies' Aid in that absurd fashion?" "Yes, I know, but please." "I didn't know it was absurd until I went and found out that they'd rather see the report girl than Jimmy. So then I wrote to my Ladies' Aiders, because Jimmy is far away from them, and I thought maybe it could be their little India boy, the same as Aunt Polly was I your little India girl. And Aunt Polly, you will let me do your hair, won't you?" Aunt Polly put her hand to her throat. The old helpless feeling was upon her, she knew. "But, Pollyanna, when the ladies told me this afternoon how you came to them, I was so ashamed. Pollyanna began to dance up and down lightly on her toes. You didn't say I couldn't do your hair," she cried triumphantly. And so I'm sure it means just the other way around, sort of like it did the other day about Mr. Pendleton's jelly that you didn't send, but you didn't want me to say you didn't send me. Now, you just wait where you are. I'll go get a comb." But Pollyanna, remonstrated Aunt Polly, following the little girl from the room and panting up the stairs after her. Oh, did you come up here? Pollyanna greeted her at the door of Miss Pollyanna's own room. Oh, that'll be nicer yet. I've got the comb. Now sit down, please, right here. Oh, I'm so glad you let me do it. But, Pollyanna, Miss Polly did not finish her sentence. To her helpless amazement, she found herself in the low chair before the dressing table, with her hair already tumbling about her ears under 10 eager but very gentle fingers. Oh my, what pretty hair you've got, prattled Pollyanna. And there's so much more of it than Mrs. Snow has too. But of course you need more anyhow because you're well and can go places where folks can see it. My, I reckon folks will be glad when they do see it and surprised too, 'cause you've had it so long. Why, Aunt Polly, I'll make you so pretty everybody'll just love to look at you. Pollyanna, gasped a stifled but shocked voice from a veil of hair. I'm sure I don't know why I'm letting you do this silly thing. Why, Polly, I should think you'd be glad to have folks like to look at you. Don't you like to look at pretty things? I'm ever so much happier when I look at pretty folks as when I look at the other kind. I'm so sorry for them, but, and I just love to do folks' hair. Purred Pollyanna contentedly. I did quite a lot of ladies' haters, but there wasn't any of them so nice as yours. Mrs. White was pretty nice, though, and she looked just lovely one day when I dressed her up. And oh, Aunt Polly, I just happened to think of something, but it's a secret and I shan't tell. Now your hair's almost done, and pretty quick. I'm going to leave you just a minute, and you must promise not to stir nor peek even till I come back. Now remember, she finished as she ran from the room. Aloud, Miss Polly said nothing. To herself, she said that, of course, she should at once undo the absurd work of her niece's fingers and put her hair up properly again. As for peeking, just as if she cared how. At that moment, unaccountably, Miss Polly caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror of the dressing table, and what she saw sent a flush of rosy color to her cheeks that, well, she only flushed the more at the sight. She saw a face. Not young, it is true, but just now alight with excitement and surprise. The cheeks were pretty pink. The eyes sparkled. The hair, dark and still damp from the outdoor air, lay in loose waves about the forehead and curved back over the ears in wonderfully becoming lines, with softening little curls here and there. So amazed and absorbed was Miss Polly with what she saw in the glass that she quite forgot her determination to do over her hair until she heard Pollyanna enter the room again. Before she could move, then, she felt a folded something slipped across her eyes and tied in the back. Pollyanna, what are you doing? She cried. Pollyanna chuckled. That's just what I don't want you to know, Aunt Polly. And I was afraid you would peek, so I tied him the handkerchief. Now, sit still. It won't take but just a minute, and I'll let you see. But, Pollyanna, began Miss Polly, struggling blindly to her feet, you must take this off. Child, what are you doing? She gasped as she felt something soft slipped about her shoulders. Pollyanna only chuckled the more gleefully. With trembling fingers, she was draping about her aunt's shoulders the fleecy folds of a beautiful lace shawl, yellowed from long years of packing away, and fragrant with lavender. Pollyanna had found the shawl the week before when Nancy had been regulating the attic, and it had occurred to her today that there was no reason why her aunt, as well as Mrs. White of her Western home, should be dressed up. Her task completed, Pollyanna surveyed her work with eyes that approved, but that saw yet one touch wanting. Promptly, therefore, she pulled her aunt towards the sun parlor where she could see a belated red rose blooming on the trellis within reach of her hand. Pollyanna, what are you doing? Where are you taking me to? Recoiled Aunt Polly, vainly trying to hold herself back. Pollyanna, I shall not. It's just in some parlor. Only a minute. I'll have you ready now in quick or no time, panted Pollyanna, reaching for the rose and thrusting it into the soft hair above Miss Polly's left ear. There, she exulted, untying the knot of the handkerchief and flinging the bit of linen far from her. Oh, Aunt Polly, now I reckon you'd be glad I dressed you up. For one dazed moment, Miss Polly looked at her bedecked self and at her surroundings. Then she gave a low cry and fled to her room. Pollyanna, following the direction of her aunt's last dismayed gaze, saw, through the window of the sun parlor, the horse and gig turning into the driveway. She recognized at once the man who held the reins. Delightedly, she leaned forward. "Oh, Dr. Chilton! Dr. Chilton! You want to see me? I'm up here." "Yes," smiled the doctor, a little gravely. "Will you come down, please?" In the bedroom, Pollyanna found a flush-faced, angry-eyed woman plucking at the pins that held the lace shawl in place. "Pollyanna, how could you?" moaned the woman. "To think of your rigging me up like this and then letting me be seen." Pollyanna stopped in dismay. "But you look lovely, perfectly lovely, Aunt Pollyanna." "Lovely!" scorned the woman, flinging the shawl to one side and attacking her hair with shaking fingers. "Oh, Aunt Polly, please, please let the hair stay." "Stay like this, as if I would." And Miss Polly pulled the lock so tightly back that the last curl lay stretched dead at the ends of her fingers. "Oh, dear. And you did look so pretty," almost sobbed Pollyanna as she stumbled through the door. Downstairs, Pollyanna found the doctor waiting in his gig. "I've prescribed you for a patient, and he sent me to get the prescription filled," announced the doctor. "Will you go?" "You mean an errand to the drugstore?" asked Pollyanna, a little uncertainly. "Well, I used to go some for the ladies' aiders." The doctor shook his head with a smile. "Not exactly. It's Mr. John Pendleton. He would like to see you today, if you'd be so good as to come. It stopped raining, so I drove down after you. Will you come? I'll call for you and bring you back before 6 o'clock." "I'd love to!" exclaimed Pollyanna. "Well, let me ask Aunt Polly." In a few moments she returned, hat in hand, but with rather a sober face. "Didn't your aunt want you to go?" asked the doctor, a little diffidently, as they drove away. "Well, yes," sighed Pollyanna. "She wanted me to go too much, I'm afraid." "Wanted you to go too much?" Pollyanna sighed again. "Yes, I reckon she meant she didn't want me there. You see, she said, 'Yes, yes, run along, do. I wish you'd gone before.'" The doctor smiled, but with his lips only. His eyes were very grave. For some time he said nothing. Then, a little hesitantly, he asked, "Wasn't it your aunt I saw you with a few minutes ago, in the window of the sun parlor?" Pollyanna drew a long breath. "Yes, that's what's the whole trouble, I suppose. You see, I dressed her up in a perfectly lovely lace shawl I found upstairs, and I fixed her hair and put in a rose, and she looked so pretty. Didn't you think she looked just lovely?" For a moment the doctor did not answer. When he did speak, his voice was so low that Pollyanna could but just hear the words. "Yes, Pollyanna, I I thought she did look just lovely." "Did you? I'm so glad. Well, tell her," nodded the little girl contentedly. To her surprise, the doctor gave a sudden exclamation. "Never! Pollyanna, I I'm afraid I shall have to ask you not to tell her that." "What? Why, Dr. Chilton, why not?" "Oh, I should think you'd be glad, but—" "She might not be," cut in the doctor. Pollyanna considered this for a moment. "Well, that's so. Well, maybe she wouldn't," she sighed. "I remember now. 'Twas 'cause she saw you that she ran, and she spoke afterwards about her being seen in that rig." "Hmm, I thought as much," declared the doctor under his breath. "Still, I don't see why," maintained Pollyanna, "when she looks so pretty." The doctor said nothing. He did not speak again, indeed, until they were almost to the great stone house in which John Pendleton lay with a broken leg. No, down the way a little bit. Chapter 17. Just like a book. John Pendleton greeted Pollyanna today with a smile. Well, Miss Pollyanna, I'm thinking you must be a very forgiving little person, else you wouldn't have come to see me again today. What, Mr. Pendleton? I was real glad to come, and I'm sure I don't see why I shouldn't be either. Oh, well, you know, I was pretty cross with you, I'm afraid. Both the other day when you so kindly brought me the jelly, and that time when you found me with a broken leg at first. By the way, too, I don't think I've ever thanked you for that. Now I'm sure that even you would admit that you were very forgiving to come and see me after such an ungrateful treatment as that. Pollyanna stirred uneasily. But I was glad to find you. Oh, that is, I mean, I was glad your, I don't mean, I was glad your leg was broken, of course, she corrected hurriedly. John Pendleton smiled. I understand. Your tongue does get away with you once in a while, doesn't it, Miss Pollyanna? I do thank you, however, and I consider you a very brave little girl to do what you did that day. I thank you for the jelly, too, he added in a lighter voice. Did you like it? Asked Pollyanna with interest. Very much. I suppose there isn't any more today that Aunt Polly didn't send, is there? He added with an odd smile. His visitor looked distressed. Oh, no, sir. She hesitated, then went on with a heightened color. Oh, please, Mr. Pendleton. Oh, I didn't mean to be rude the other day when I said Aunt Polly did not send the jelly. There was no answer. John Pendleton was not smiling now. He was looking straight ahead of him with eyes that seemed to be gazing through and beyond the object before them. After a time, he drew a long sigh and turned to Pollyanna. When he spoke, his voice carried the old, nervous fretfulness. Well, well, this will never do at all. I didn't send for you to see me moping this time. Listen, out in the library, that big room where the telephone is, you'll find a carved box on the lower shelf of the big case with glass doors in the corner not far from the fireplace. That is, it'll be there if that confounded woman hasn't regulated it to somewhere else. You may bring it to me. It is heavy, but not too heavy for you to carry, I think. Oh, I'm awfully strong, declared Pollyanna cheerfully as she sprang to her feet. In a minute she had returned with the box. It was a wonderful half hour that Pollyanna spent then. The box was full of treasures, curios that John Pendleton had picked up in years of travel, and concerning each there was some entertaining story, whether it was a set of exquisitely carved chessmen from China or a little jade idol from India. It was after she had heard the story about the idol that Pollyanna murmured wistfully, Well, I suppose it would be better to take a little boy in India to bring up, one that didn't know anything more than to think that God was in that doll thing, than it would be to take Jimmy Bean, a little boy who knows God is up in the sky. Still, I can't help wishing they had wanted Jimmy Bean too, besides the India boys. John Pendleton did not seem to hear her. Again his eyes were staring straight before him, looking at nothing. But soon he had roused himself and had picked up another curio to talk about. The visit, certainly, was a delightful one, but before it was over, Pollyanna was realizing that they were talking about something besides the wonderful things in the beautiful carved box. They were talking of herself, of Nancy, of Aunt Polly, and of her daily life. They were talking, too, even of the life and home long ago in the far western town. Not until it was nearly time for her to go did the man say, in a voice Pollyanna never heard before from stern John Pendleton, "Oh, girl, I want you to come and see me often. Will you? Well, I'm lonesome and I need you. There is another reason, and I'm going to tell you that too. I thought at first, after I found out who you were the other day, that I didn't want you to come anymore. You reminded me of something I've tried for long years to forget. So I said to myself that I never wanted to see you again. And every day, when the doctor asked me if I wouldn't let him bring you to me, I said no. But well, after a time, I found I was wanting to see you so much that the fact I wasn't seeing you was making me remember all the more vividly the things I was so wanting to forget. So now I want you to come. Will you? Will you, little girl? What? Yes, Mr. Pendleton, breathed Pollyanna, her eyes luminous with sympathy for the sad-faced man lying back on the pillow before her. Well, I'd love to come. Thank you, said John Pendleton gently. After supper that evening, Pollyanna, sitting on the back porch, told Nancy all about Mr. John Pendleton's wonderful carved box and the still more wonderful things it contained. When ter think, sighed Nancy, that he showed ye all them things and told ye about 'em like that. Him that's so cross he never talks ter no one. No one. Oh, but he isn't cross, Nancy, only outside, demurred Pollyanna with quick loyalty. I don't see why everybody thinks he's so bad, neither. They wouldn't if they knew him. But even Aunt Polly doesn't like him very well. She wouldn't send the jelly to him, you know, and she was so afraid he'd think he did send it. Probably she didn't call him no duty, shrugged Nancy. But what beats me is how he happened to take to you so, Miss Pollyanna. Mean no offense to you, of course. But he ain't the sort of man what generally takes to kids. He ain't. Pollyanna smiled happily. But he did, Nancy. She nodded. Only I reckon even he didn't want to all the time. Why, only today he owned up to the one time he just felt he never wanted to see me again because I reminded him of something he wanted to forget. But afterwards, what's that? Interrupted Nancy excitedly. Well, he said you reminded him of something he wanted to forget. Well, yes, but afterwards, what was it? Nancy was eagerly insistent. Well, he didn't tell me. He just said it was something. The mystery, breathed Nancy in an awestruck voice. Why, that's why he took you in the first place. Oh, Miss Pollyanna. Why, that's just like a book. I've read lots of 'em. Lady Maud's Secret and The Lost Heir and for years, all them and mysteries and things just like this. My stars and stockings, just think of having a book lived right under your nose like this, and me not knowing it all this time. Now, tell me everything. Everything he said, Miss Pollyanna, there's a dear. No wonder he took to you. No wonder. No wonder. Why, he didn't, cried Pollyanna. Not till I talked to him first. I didn't even know who it was until I took the cat's foot jelly, and I had to make him understand that now Pollyanna didn't send it, and Nancy sprung to her feet and clasped her hands together suddenly. Oh, Miss Pollyanna, I know, she exulted rapturously. The next minute she was down at Pollyanna's side again. Tell me, now think, and answer straight and true, she urged excitedly. It was after he found out she was Miss Pollyanna's niece that he said he didn't ever want to see you again, wasn't it? Oh, yes. I told him that last time I saw him. He told me this today. I thought as much, triumphed Nancy. And Miss Polly wouldn't send the jelly herself, would she? No. And you told him she didn't send it? Why, yes, And he began to act queer and cry out sudden after he found out you were a niece. He did that, didn't he? What? Yes, he did act a little queer over that jelly, admitted Pollyanna with a thoughtful frown. Nancy drew a long sigh. Then I've got it, I'm sure. Now listen. Mr. John Pendleton was Miss Polly Harrington's lover, she announced impressively, but with a furtive glance over her shoulder. What? Well, Nancy, he couldn't be. She doesn't like him, objected Pollyanna. Nancy gave her a scornful glance. Well, of course she doesn't. That's the quarrel. Pollyanna still looked incredulous. And with another long breath, Nancy happily settled herself to tell the story. Well, it's like this. Just before you came, Mr. Tom told me Miss Polly had a lover once. Well, I didn't believe it. I couldn't. Her and a lover. But Mr. Tom said she had, and that he was living now right in this town. And now I know, of course, it's John Pendleton. He got mystery in his life. Don't he shut himself in that grand house alone and never speak to no one? Didn't he act queer when he found out you were Miss Polly's niece? And now he can't own up that you remind him of something he wants to forget. Just as if anybody could see 'twas Miss Polly. And her saying she wouldn't send him no jelly too. Why, Miss Pollyanna, it's a plain as nose on your face. It is, it is. Oh, breathed Pollyanna in wide-eyed amazement. But, Nancy, I should think if they loved each other, they'd make up sometime. Both of them all alone and so all these years. I should think they'd be glad to make up. Nancy sniffed disdainfully. Well, I guess maybe you don't much about lovers, Miss Pollyanna. You ain't big enough yet, anyhow. But if there is a set of folks in the world that wouldn't have no use for that your glad game of yourn, it'd be a pair of quarreling lovers, and that's what they'd be. Ain't he cross as sticks most generally? And ain't she? Nancy stopped abruptly, remembering just in time to whom and about whom she was speaking. Suddenly, however, she chuckled. Wasn't saying no, Miss Pollyanna, but it would be a pretty slick piece of business if you could get them to plan it, so that they would be glad to make up. But my land, wouldn't folks stare some, Miss Polly and him? Well, I guess so. There ain't much chance, much chance. Pollyanna said nothing, but when she went into the house a little later, her face was very thoughtful. Chapter 18. Prisons. As the warm August days passed, Pollyanna went very frequently to the great house on Pendleton Hill. She did not feel, however, that her visits were really a success. Not but that the man seemed to want her there. He sent for her, indeed, frequently, but that when she was there, he seemed scarcely any the happier for her presence. At least, so Pollyanna thought. He talked to her, it was true, and he showed her many strange and beautiful things, books, pictures, and curios. But he still fretted audibly over his own helplessness, and he chafed visibly under the rules and regulatings of the unwelcome members of his household. He did, indeed, seem to like to hear Pollyanna talk, however, and Pollyanna talked. Pollyanna liked to talk, but she was never sure that she would not look up and find him lying back on his pillow with that white, hurt look that always pained her. And she was never sure which, if any, of her words had brought him there. As for telling him the glad game and trying to get him to play it, Pollyanna never seen the time yet when she thought he would care to hear about it. She had twice tried to tell him, but neither time had she got beyond the beginning of what her father had said. John Pendleton had on each occasion turned the conversation abruptly to another subject. Pollyanna never doubted now that John Pendleton was her Aunt Polly's one-time lover, and with all the strength of her loving, loyal heart, she wished she could in some way bring happiness into their, to her mind, miserably lonely lives. Just how she was to do this, however, she could not see. She talked to Mr. Pendleton about her aunt, and he listened, sometimes politely, sometimes irritably, frequently with a quizzical smile on his usually stern lips. She talked to her aunt about Mr. Pendleton, or rather she tried to talk to her about him. As a general thing, however, Miss Polly would not listen long. She always found something else to talk about. She frequently did that, however, when Pollyanna was talking of others, of Dr. Chilton, for instance. Pollyanna laid this, though, to the fact that it had been Dr. Chilton who had seen her in the sun parlor with the rose in her hair and the lace shawl draped about her shoulders. Aunt Polly, indeed, seemed particularly bitter against Dr. Chilton, as Pollyanna found out one day when a hard cold shut her up in the house. If you are not better by night, I shall send for the doctor, Aunt Polly said. Shall you? Well, then I'm going to be worse, gurgled Pollyanna. I'd love to have Dr. Chilton come see me. She wondered then at the look that came over her aunt's face. "It will not be Dr. Chilton, Pollyanna," Miss Polly said sternly. "Dr. Chilton is not our family physician. I shall send for Dr. Warren, if you are worse." Pollyanna did not grow worse, however, and Dr. Warren was not summoned. "And I'm so glad, too," Pollyanna said to her aunt that evening. "Of course, I like Dr. Warren and all that, but I like Dr. Chilton better, and I'm afraid he'd feel hurt if I didn't have him. You see, he wasn't really to blame after all that he happened to see you when I dressed you up so pretty that day, Aunt Polly," she finished wistfully. "That will do, Pollyanna. I really do not wish to discuss Dr. Chilton or his feelings," reproved Miss Polly decisively. Pollyanna looked at her for a moment with mournfully interested eyes. Then she sighed. "Well, I just love to see you when your cheeks are pink like that, Aunt Polly. But I would so like to fix your hair if... Well, Aunt Polly!" But her aunt was already out of sight down the hall. It was toward the end of August that Pollyanna, making an early morning call on John Pendleton, found the flaming band of blue and gold and green edged with red and violet lying across his pillow. She stopped short in awed delight. "What, Mr. Pendleton, it's a baby rainbow! A real rainbow come in to pay you a visit!" she exclaimed, clapping her hands together softly. "Oh, oh, oh, how pretty it is! But how did it get in?" she cried. The man laughed a little grimly. John Pendleton was particularly out of sorts with the world this morning. "Well, I suppose it got in through the beveled edge of that glass thermometer in the window," he said wearily. "The sun shouldn't strike it at all, but it does in the morning." "Oh, but it's so pretty, Mr. Pendleton. And does just the sun do that? My, if it was mine, I'd have it hanging in the sun all day long." "Lots of good you get out of the thermometer, then," laughed the man. "How do you suppose you could tell how hot it was or how cold it was if the thermometer hung in the sun all day?" "I shouldn't care," breathed Pollyanna, her fascinated eyes on the brilliant band of colors across the pillow. "Just as if anybody'd care when they were living all the time with a rainbow." The man laughed. He was watching Pollyanna's rapt face a little curiously. Suddenly, a new thought came to him. He touched the bell at his side. "Nora," he said, when the elderly maid appeared at the door, "bring me one of those big brass candlesticks from the mantel in the front room." "Yes, sir," murmured the woman, looked slightly dazed. In a minute she had returned. A musical tinkling entered the room with her as she advanced wonderingly towards the bed. It came from the prism pendants encircling the old-fashioned candelabrum in her hand. "Thank you. You may set it here on the stand," directed the man. "Now get a string and fasten it to the sash curtain fixtures of that window there. Take down the sash curtain and let the string reach straight across the window from side to side. That will be all. Thank you," he said, when she had carried out his directions. As she left the room, he turned smiling eyes toward the wondering Pollyanna. "Bring me the candlestick now, please, Pollyanna." With both hands she brought it, and in a moment he was slipping off the pendants, one by one, until they lay, a round dozen of them, side by side on the bed. "Now, my dear, suppose you take 'em hooking that little string Nora fixed across the window. If you really want to live in a rainbow, I don't see but we'll have to have a rainbow for you to live in." Pollyanna had not hung up 3 of the pendants in the sunlit window before she saw little of what was going to happen. She was so excited then that she could scarcely control her shaking fingers enough to hang up the rest. But at last her task was finished, and she stepped back with a low cry of delight. It had become a fairyland, that sumptuous but dreary bedroom. Everywhere were bits of dancing red and green, violet and orange, gold and blue. The wall, the floor, the furniture, even the bed itself were aflame with shimmering bits of color. "Oh, oh, oh, how lovely!" breathed Pollyanna, and then she laughed suddenly. "I just reckon the sun itself is trying to play the game now, don't you?" she cried, forgetting for the moment that Mr. Pendleton could not know what she was talking about. Oh, how I wish I had lots of these things. I would like to give 'em to Aunt Polly and Mrs. Snow and lots of folks. I reckon then they'd be glad, all right. Why, I even think Aunt Polly'd get so glad she couldn't help banging doors if she lived in a rainbow like that, don't you? Mr. Pendleton laughed. Well, from my remembrance of your Aunt Miss Pollyanna, I must say that it would take something more than a few prisms in the sunlight to make her bang many doors for gladness. But come now, really, what do you mean? Pollyanna stared slightly, then she drew a long breath. Oh, well, I forgot. You don't know about the game. I remember now. Well, suppose you tell me then. And this time Pollyanna told him. She told him the whole thing from the very first, from the crutches that should have been a doll. As she talked, she did not look at his face. Her rapt eyes were still on the dancing flecks of color from the prism pendants swaying in the sunlit window. Well, that's all, she sighed when she had finished. And now you know why I said the sun was trying to play that game. For a moment, there was silence. Then a low voice from the bed said unsteadily, Perhaps, but I'm thinking that the very finest prism of them all is yourself, Pollyanna. Oh, but aren't sure beautiful red and green and purple and sunshine through me, Mr. Pendleton? Oh, don't you? Smiled the man. And Pollyanna, looking into his face, wondered why there were tears in his eyes. No, she said. Then after a minute she added mournfully, Well, I'm afraid, Mr. Pendleton, the sun doesn't make anything but freckles on me. Aunt Polly says it does make 'em. The man laughed a little, and again Pollyanna looked at him. The laugh had sounded almost like a sob. Chapter 19, which is somewhat surprising. Pollyanna entered school in September. Preliminary examinations showed that she was well advanced for a girl of her years, and she was soon a happy member of a class of girls and boys her own age. School, in some ways, was a surprise to Pollyanna, and Pollyanna, certainly in many ways, was very much of a surprise to school. They were soon on the best of terms, however, and to her aunt, Pollyanna confessed that going to school was living after all, though she'd had her doubts before. In spite of her delight in her new work, Pollyanna did not forget her old friends. True, she could not give them quite so much time now, of course, but she gave them what time she could. Perhaps John Pendleton of them all, however, was the most dissatisfied. On Saturday afternoons he spoke to her about it. See here, Pollyanna, how would you like to come live with me? He asked a little impatiently. I don't see anything of you nowadays. Pollyanna laughed. Mr. Pendleton was such a funny man. I thought you didn't like to have folks round, she said. He made a wry face. Oh, but that was before you taught me to play that wonderful game of yours. Now I'm glad to be waited on hand and foot. Never mind. I'll be on my own 2 feet yet. One of these days, and I'll see who steps around, he finished, picking up one of the crutches at his side and shaking it playfully at the little girl. They were sitting in the great library today. Oh, but you aren't really glad at all for things. You just say you are, pouted Pollyanna, her eyes on the dog dozing before the fire. You know you don't play the game right ever, Mr. Pendleton. You know you don't. The man's face grew suddenly very grave. Well, that's why I want you, little girl, to help me play it. Will you come? Pollyanna turned in surprise. Mr. Pendleton, you don't really mean that. But I do. I want you. Will you come? Pollyanna looked distressed. What? Mr. Pendleton, I can't. You know I can't. What? I'm Aunt Polly's. A quick something crossed the man's face that Polly could understand. His head came up almost fiercely. You're no more hers, and perhaps she will let you come to me, he finished more gently. Would you come if she did? Pollyanna frowned in deep thought. But Aunt Polly has been so good to me, she began slowly. And she took me when I didn't have anybody left but the ladies' aid, and again that spasm of something crossed the man's, but this time when he spoke his voice was low and very sad. Pollyanna, long years ago, I loved somebody very much. I hope to bring her some day to this house. I pictured how happy we'd be together in our home all the long years to come. Yes, pitied Pollyanna, her eyes shining with sympathy. But, well, I didn't bring her here. Never mind why. I just didn't, that's all. And ever since then, this great gray pile of stone has been a house, never a home. It takes a woman's hand and heart, or a child's presence, to make a home, Pollyanna, and I have not had either. Now will you come, my dear? Pollyanna sprang to her feet. Her face was fairly illuminated. Mr. Pendleton, you mean that? You wish you had that woman's hand and heart all this time? Why, yes, Pollyanna. Oh, I'm so glad. Well, then it's all right, sighed the little girl. Now you can take us both and everything will be lovely. Take you both? Repeated the man dazedly. A faint doubt crossed Pollyanna's countenance. Well, of course Aunt Polly isn't won over yet, but I'm sure she will be if you tell her to her just as you did to me, and then we'll both come, of course. A look of actual terror leaped into the man's eyes. What, Polly, come here? Pollyanna's eyes widened a little. Would you rather go there? She asked. Of course, the house isn't quite so pretty, but it's near. Pollyanna, what are you talking about? Asked the man very gently now. Well, where we're going to live, of course, rejoined Pollyanna in obvious surprise. Well, I thought you meant here at first. You said it was here that you had wanted Aunt Polly's hand and heart all these years to make a throne, and an inarticulate cry came from the man's throat. He raised his hand and began to speak, but the next moment he dropped his hand nervously at his side. The doctor, sir, said the man in the doorway. Said the maid in the doorway. Pollyanna rose at once. John Pendleton turned to her feverishly. Pollyanna, for heaven's sake, say nothing of what I asked you yet, he begged in a low voice. Pollyanna dimpled into a sunny smile. Well, of course not. Just as if I didn't know you'd rather tell yourself, she called back merrily over her shoulder. John Pendleton fell limply in his chair. Why, what's up? Demanded the doctor a minute later, his fingers on his patient's galloping pulse. A whimsical smile trembled on John Pendleton's lips. Overdose of your tonic, I guess, he laughed, as he noted the doctor's eyes following Pollyanna's little figure down the driveway. Chapter 20, which is more surprising. Sunday mornings, Pollyanna usually attended church and Sunday school. Sunday afternoons, she frequently went for a walk with Nancy. She had planned one for the day after her Saturday afternoon visit to Mr. John Pendleton, but on the way home Sunday school, Dr. Chilton overtook her in his gig and brought his horse to a stop. Suppose you let me drive you home, Pollyanna, he suggested. I want to speak to you a minute. I was just driving out to your place to tell you, he went on, as Pollyanna settled herself at his side. Mr. Pendleton sent a special request for you to go see him this afternoon. Sure, he says it's very important. Pollyanna nodded happily. Yes, it is. I know. I'll go. The doctor eyed her with some surprise. I'm not sure I shall let you, after all, he declared, his eyes. You seemed more upsetting than soothing yesterday, young lady. Pollyanna laughed. Oh, one me, truly. Well, not really, not as much as it was Aunt Polly. The doctor turned with a quick start. Your aunt, he ejaculated. Pollyanna gave a happy little bounce in her seat. Yes, and it's so exciting and lovely, just like a star, and I'm going to tell you, she burst out with sudden decision. We said not to mention it, but he wouldn't mind you knowing where. Of course, he meant not to mention it to her. Her? Well, yes, Aunt Polly. And of course, he would want to tell her himself instead of me having to do it. Lovers, so? Lovers? As the doctor said the word, the horses started violently, as if the hand that held the reins had given them a sharp jerk. Well, yes, nodded Pollyanna happily. Well, that's the story part, you see. Well, I didn't know it till Nancy told me. She said Aunt Polly had a lover years ago, and they quarreled. She didn't know who it was at first, but we found out now it's Mr. Pendleton. The doctor relaxed suddenly. The hand holding the reins fell limply to his lap. Oh, no, I didn't know, he said sadly. Pollyanna hurried on. They were nearing the Harrington homestead. Yes, and I'm so glad now. Well, it's come out lovely. Mr. Pendleton asked me to come and live with him, but of course I wouldn't leave Aunt Polly like that after she'd been so good to me. Then he told me all about the woman's hand and heart that he used to want, and I found that he wanted it now, and I was so glad. For of course he wants to make up the quarrel, and everything will be all right now, and Aunt Polly and I will both go to live there, and else he come live with us. Of course, Aunt Polly doesn't know yet. We haven't got everything settled, so I suppose that is why he wanted to see me this afternoon, sure. The doctor sat suddenly erect. There was an odd smile on his lips. Yes, I can well imagine that Mr. John Pendleton does want to see you, Pollyanna, he nodded, as he pulled his horse to a stop before the door. There's Aunt Polly down at the window, cried Pollyanna, a second later. Oh, wait, no, well, she isn't. But I thought I saw her. No, she isn't there. Now, said the doctor. His lips had suddenly lost their smile. Pollyanna found a very nervous John Pendleton waiting for her that afternoon. Pollyanna, he began at once. I've been trying all night to puzzle out what you meant by all that yesterday about my wanting your Aunt Polly's hand and heart here all those years. What do you mean? Well, because you were lovers, once. And I was so glad you still felt that way now. Lovers? Your Aunt Polly and I? At the obvious surprise in the man's voice, Pollyanna opened wide her eyes. What? Oh, Mr. Pendleton? Nancy said you were. The man gave a very short laugh. Indeed. Well, I'm afraid I shall have to say that Nancy didn't know. Then you weren't lovers? Pollyanna's voice was tragic with dismay. Never. And it isn't all coming out like a book? There was no answer. The man's eyes were moodily fixed out the window. Oh, dear. I was on so splendidly, almost sobbed Pollyanna. I'd have been so glad to come with Aunt Polly. And you won't now? The man asked the question without turning his head. Well, of course not. Well, I'm Aunt Polly's. The man turned now almost fiercely. Before you were hers, Pollyanna, you were your mother's. And it was your mother's hand and heart that I wanted long years ago. My mother's? Yes. I had not meant to tell you, but perhaps it's better all that I do now. John Pendleton's face had grown very white. He was speaking with evident difficulty. Pollyanna, her eyes wide and frightened and her lips parted, was gazing up and fixedly. I loved your mother, but she didn't love me. And after a time, she went away with your father. And I did not know till then how much I did care. The whole world suddenly seemed to turn black under my fingers. But never mind. For long years, I have been a cross, crabbed, unlovable, unloved old man. Though I'm not nearly 60 yet, Pollyanna. Then one day, Like one of the prisms that you love so well, little girl, you danced into my life and flecked my dreary old world with dashes of the purple and gold and scarlet of your own bright cheeriness. I found out after a time who you were, and I thought then I never wanted to see you again. I didn't want to be reminded of your mother. But you know how that came out. I just had to have you come. And now I want you always. Pollyanna, won't you come now? But, Mr. Pendleton, there's Aunt Polly. Pollyanna's eyes were blurred with tears. The man made an impatient gesture. What about me? How do you suppose I'm going to be glad about anything without you? Why, Pollyanna, it's only since you came that I've been even half glad to live. But if I had you for my own little girl, I'd be glad for anything. And I tried to make you glad too, my dear. You shouldn't have a wish ungratified. All my money to the last cent should go to make you happy. Pollyanna looked shocked. Why, Mr. Pendleton, as if I'd let you spend it on me, all that money you've saved for the heathen. A dull red came to the man's face. He started to speak, but Pollyanna was still talking. Besides, anybody with such a lot of money as you doesn't need me to make you glad about things. You're making other folks so glad giving them up things that you just can't help being glad yourself. Why, look at all those presents you gave Miss Snow and me, and the gold piece you gave Nancy on her birthday, and yes, yes, never mind all that, interrupted the man. His face was very, very red now, and no wonder, perhaps, it was not for giving things that John Pendleton had been best known in the past. That's all nonsense. 'Twasn't much anyhow. But what there was because of you. You gave those things, not I. Yes, you did, he repeated in answer to the shocked denial in her face. And that only goes to prove all the more how I need you, little girl. He added, his voice softening into tender pleading once more. If ever I am to play the glad game, Pollyanna, you have to come and play it with me. The little girl's forehead puckered into a wistful frown. Aunt Polly has been so good to me, she began, but the man interrupted her sharply. The old irritability had come back to his face. Impatience, which would brook no opposition, had been a part of John Pendleton's nature, too young to yield very easily now to restraint. Of course she's been good to you, but she doesn't want you, I'll warrant. Half as so much as I do, he contested. Well, Mr. Pendleton, she's glad, I know, to have... Glad? Interrupted the man, thoroughly losing his patience now. I'll wager Miss Polly doesn't know how to be glad for anything. Oh, she does her duty. I know she's a very dutiful woman. I've had experience with her duty before. I'll acknowledge we hadn't been the best of friends for the last 15 or 20 years. But I know her. Everyone knows her. And she isn't the glad kind, Pollyanna. She doesn't know how to be. As for your coming to me, you just ask her and see if she won't let you come. And oh, little girl, I want you so, brokenly. Pollyanna rose to her feet with a long sigh. All right, I'll ask her, she said wistfully. Of course, I don't mean I wouldn't like to live here with you, Mr. Pendleton, but... She did not complete her sentence. There was a moment's silence, then she added, well, anyhow, I'm glad I didn't tell her yesterday, 'cause then I suppose she was wanted too. John Pendleton smiled grimly. Well, yes, Pollyanna. I guess it is just as well you didn't mention it yesterday. Well, I didn't. Only to the doctor, and of course, well, he doesn't count. The doctor! cried John Pendleton, turning quickly. Not Dr. Chilton? Well, yes. When he came to tell me you wanted to see me today, you know? Well, of all the... muttered the man, falling back in his chair. Then he sat up with sudden interest. And what did Dr. Chilton say? He asked. Pollyanna frowned thoughtfully. What? Well, I don't remember. Well, not much, I reckon. Oh, he did say he well imagined he'd want to see me. Oh, he did indeed, answered John Pendleton, and Pollyanna wondered why he gave that sudden, queer little laugh. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the story or anything really. Feel free to comment, like, and subscribe, and check out the links below. Have a wonderful night, and I'll see you in the next one.